Welcome to Under the Hood, where we lift the hood on the people, ideas, and stories shaping modern culture and discover what really makes them run. Broadcasting from the little station on Commercial Street in Atchison, Kansas, this is Chesterton Radio.
So right now, literally as we are speaking, there are probably millions of teenagers, working professionals, and, retirees all staring at their screens.
Absolutely. Millions of them.
Right, and they are completely hypnotized by this white-haired, 60-something-year-old guy sitting in a recording studio down in Atlanta. And he's doing something that sounds incredibly boring on paper. He's isolating a single, solitary kick drum from a grunge song from 1991. Or maybe he's just playing back the backing vocals of some 1970s rock anthem.
Yeah, just sitting there at his computer desk, clicking a mouse. Exactly. And people are absolutely devouring it. I mean, they cannot get enough. So the question we have to ask is why? In this era where we have infinite, algorithmically generated content designed to give us these cheap dopamine hits every 3 seconds, why on earth are millions of people willingly tuning in to a 45-minute lecture on chord progressions?
It is a phenomenon that totally defies, every piece of conventional wisdom about the modern internet. Today, we're taking a really deep dive into the world of Rick Beato and his YouTube channel, Everything Music. But we are not just doing a biography here. We are looking at this through a highly specific, kind of unexpected lens.
Right. Our mission for this deep dive is a little different.
Yeah, we are bringing in the early 20th century philosopher, theologian, and cultural critic, G.K. Chesterton. So we are basically going to use this Edwardian essayist from London to understand a modern YouTube music producer from Georgia.
Which is wild because on paper, those two guys could not seem further apart. I mean, you've got Chesterton wandering Fleet Street a century ago, wearing this sprawling cape, carrying a sword stick, and writing about medieval philosophy.
Right.
And then you've got Beato sitting in front of a digital audio workstation, holding a Gibson Les Paul, and analyzing, the compressed bass frequencies in a Blink-182 track.
It sounds like a stretch, but the philosophical overlap is actually staggering. When you really look at it, Beato's passionate, rigorous breakdowns of popular music, they reveal this intensely Chestertonian worldview.
How so? What are the main themes here?
Well, we are talking about a fierce belief in objective beauty, for one, and we are looking at the profound dignity of human craftsmanship. And I think most importantly, we are exploring this really beautiful paradox. The idea that understanding the sheer mechanics of a song, like the gritty mathematical nuts and bolts of it, doesn't actually destroy the magic of the art.
Right, it actually deepens the mystery.
Exactly. We want to figure out why millions of people trust this man to explain their favorite music to them, and what that massive hunger reveals about our own innate desire for excellence and truth, especially in a world that is just drowning in disposable novelty.
Let's start by just looking at the sheer unlikeliness of this whole thing, because Beato's success is kind of a miracle in the modern creator economy. Back in 2015, he launches this channel. He's in his 50s at the time. And by his own admission, he figured nobody was going to watch an old guy with white hair talk about music theory on YouTube.
Yeah, he thought his audience would be like a few dozen jazz nerds.
Right. Fast forward to today, and he has well over 5 million subscribers. He's nearing 2 billion total views. And his flagship series is called What Makes This Song Great? He takes these songs that you, the listener, have heard on the radio 10,000 times, and he pulls up the original multi-track recordings and just isolates the individual instruments.
He'll just solo the bass line or pull up this acoustic rhythm guitar that's totally buried in the final mix.
But wait, let me push back on that for a second. Because usually if you take a beautiful unified painting and you just zoom all the way in on a single messy brushstroke, you lose the art, right? You lose the context. There's that old saying that dissecting a joke is like dissecting a frog. You understand how it works, but the frog dies in the process.
Right, the magic gets killed on the operating
Yeah.
table.
So why doesn't that happen when Beato rips a song apart? Why doesn't the song just die?
Because he's not dissecting a corpse. He is exploring a living ecosystem. And this is exactly where G.K. Chesterton gives us this incredible psychological framework to understand what Beato is actually doing to our brains.
Okay, I want to hear this.
So in Chesterton's 1909 book, Tremendous Trifles, he writes this allegory about two little boys. Their names are Paul and Peter. And both boys are offered a magical wish.
Classic fairy tale setup.
Exactly. So Paul wishes to become a giant. He wants to be this monumental figure striding across the continent, seeing the whole world at once from above. But when he actually becomes a giant, the world suddenly shrinks and loses its majesty. The mighty Himalayas just look like little speed bumps to him. The vast oceans look like shallow puddles. By zooming out so far, the world becomes small and boring and just utterly disenchanted. He gets too big for the wonder of the world.
Oh, wow. So he basically loses the scale of everything that makes life interesting.
Right. But Peter, the other boy, he makes the exact opposite wish. He wishes to become a pygmy. He wants to shrink down to the size of an insect.
So he goes micro.
Yes. And when he does, the mundane, everyday garden that he has played in his whole life suddenly becomes this vast, terrifying, enchanted wilderness. A single blade of grass becomes a towering redwood tree. A tiny pebble becomes an insurmountable mountain.
That's amazing.
Chesterton was making a really profound point about human perception here. True wonder isn't found by looking at things from a detached, macro-level distance, where everything just blurs together into a familiar block. True wonder is actually found by zooming in. It's found by paying microscopic attention to the seemingly trivial details.
Because those tiny details are what's actually holding up the entire universe.
Exactly. So Rick Beato is effectively turning you, the listener, into Peter the Pygmy. We have all heard these hit songs so many times that we've essentially become like Paul the Giant.
Right. When a classic rock song comes on the radio, we just hear this solid block of sound.
It's just a blur of familiarity.
Uh-huh.
We are completely deaf to the wonder of it because we are just too used to it. But then Beato sits us down in his studio and he zooms all the way in on just the tambourine track. Or just the third harmony vocal in the pre-chorus.
And suddenly we're shrinking down into the actual architecture of the song. We're like wandering through the tall grass of the rhythm section.
He is re-enchanting something we thought we already knew. He forces us to hear for the very first time what we've been merely listening to for decades.
He really commands this journey with serious authority. I mean, Beato didn't just stumble into this gig with a webcam and an opinion.
No, not at all.
He started playing cello at 7, double bass at 13, guitar at 14. He holds a Bachelor of Arts in Classical Bass from Ithaca College and a master's degree in jazz guitar from the New England Conservatory of Music. He lectured at the University of Alabama and Berklee College of Music.
He's a heavy hitter in the academic world.
And the practical world, too. He ran Black Dog Sound Studios down in Georgia for years. He worked with major bands like Need to Breathe and Shinedown. He has spent decades in the trenches as a session musician, an audio engineer, and a record producer. He knows how the sausage is made because he has literally been running the grinder for 30 years.
And what absolutely blows my mind about this is that he is taking this elite, masterclass level musical education, and he is just giving it away.
On YouTube for free.
Yes, for free. He's not locking it behind a university paywall. That generosity is so central to his appeal. He often mentions how lucky he was to have a world-class music education, and he views his channel as a way of passing on a gift.
Which is pretty rare these days.
It is. And he never talks down to his audience. He operates on this core assumption that you are fully capable of understanding complex, sophisticated beauty. He democratizes musical excellence.
Oh, I love that phrase.
In a media landscape that constantly panders to the lowest common denominator, treating the audience as intelligent and capable is an incredibly magnetic, rebellious act.
Okay, let's see how this actually works in practice. Because this transition from the abstract idea of wonder to concrete craftsmanship is where Beato really shines. One of the things he proves over and over again is that great art requires underlying structure and immense discipline, even in genres that we typically associate with, raw rebellion and chaos.
Right, the genres where people think there are no rules.
Exactly. So I'm thinking of his breakdown of Nirvana's Smells Like Teen Spirit from their 1991 album, Nevermind. If you look at the cultural narrative around grunge, especially from classical purists or older generations back then, it was so often dismissed as primitive. People wrote it off as just noise, just a bunch of angry guys in flannel shirts who couldn't really play their instruments, thrashing away at loud power chords in a dirty garage.
It's the persistent myth of the happy accident, this idea that these guys just got lucky making noise.
Right.
But when Beato puts Smells Like Teen Spirit under his microscope, he shatters that myth completely.
Yeah.
He reveals that the song is an absolute masterclass in musical architecture. Take the drums, for instance.
Oh, Dave Grohl's drumming is iconic.
It is, but Beato shows us why it's iconic. He solos the drum track. Now, you have to understand, in modern pop or rock music today, drums are almost entirely quantized.
Explain quantized for a second, just so we're all on the same page.
Sure. So a producer runs the raw drum audio through a computer program that snaps every single snare hit and kick drum to a mathematically perfect digital grid. The computer basically ensures the rhythm is robotically flawless. Every hit falls exactly on the millisecond it's supposed to.
Okay, so it removes human error.
Right. But Grohl's drumming on that track is totally unquantized. It is organic, and it is deeply physically human. Beato isolates the chorus, and he points out something incredible. Every time Grohl plays a specific fill leading back into the main groove, he deliberately delays his kick drum just a fraction of a second.
Like he's dragging the beat.
Just microscopically. It's a tiny hesitation. Now, a computer today would have corrected that. It would have pulled that kick drum forward onto the grid. But that unquantized delay is exactly the mechanism that makes the beat feel so visceral.
It pulls back, creating this physical tension in your body, and then it releases like a slingshot.
Exactly. That slight human hesitation creates the colossal groove. It is the imperfection that creates the power.
Wow. And then Beato moves on to Kurt Cobain's vocal melody, right?
Yeah, he actually sits at his piano in the studio to demonstrate this, and it completely shifts how you hear the song. Cobain's writing is what theory nerds would call an angular intervallic melody.
That sounds very academic for a punk rock song.
It does, but it's true. Essentially, Cobain is jumping around the F Aeolian scale, but he's intentionally hitting these incredibly tense, dissonant notes instead of the easy, predictable ones. Beato points out how Cobain leans into a sus2 chord, and how he repeatedly hits the flat sixth and the sharp fourth.
Okay, what does that actually do to the listener?
Well, those specific interval choices are doing immense psychological heavy lifting. A flat sixth physically pulls the melody downward. It sounds inherently mournful and melancholic to the human ear.
Okay.
And the sharp fourth, which is historically known as the tritone, or the devil in music, it creates this profound, unresolved musical tension. Your brain desperately wants that note to resolve to a safer and more stable harmony. But Cobain just leaves it hanging there.
So it literally sounds like anxiety.
Yes. It sounds like angst. People claimed Cobain didn't know what he was doing musically. Beato responds by saying, look, it doesn't matter if Cobain knew the academic terminology. His ear led him to those specific, highly sophisticated notes.
His intuition was highly structured.
Exactly. That intuition is the mark of a genius who understands the architecture of sound, even if he doesn't know the textbook names for the bricks.
I always picture it like someone building a perfectly sound skyscraper in pitch black darkness. Cobain might not have been able to pass a written exam on counterpoint at the New England Conservatory, but his ear absolutely demanded excellence.
That's a great analogy.
And Beato also makes sure you realize it wasn't just the band pulling this off. He highlights the absolute craftsman behind the glass, too.
Oh, yeah. Producer Butch Vig and the mixer, Andy Wallace.
Because the production choices on that album were meticulous.
Meticulous is the word. The band actually complained at the time that Andy Wallace's final mix was too slick. They thought it sounded too polished for a punk rock record.
They wanted it to sound dirtier.
Right. But Beato argues that Wallace's incredibly disciplined panning of Cobain's double-tracked vocals, placing them perfectly in the left and right speakers to create width, and the sheer compressed power he brought to the drum mix is exactly the mechanism that gave the song its arena rock world-changing impact.
The chaos was contained within this pristine sonic framework.
Yes. It is a brilliant defense of a piece of art that politely trained musicians might just dismiss as angsty noise.
Which brings us directly into the territory of G.K. Chesterton, because why do we so often dismiss the things that are rough around the edges or popular with the masses?
Well, in 1901, Chesterton published a collection of essays called The Defendant. And in this book, he basically appointed himself the defense attorney for all the aspects of culture that polite high society had dismissed or mocked or deemed lowbrow.
He defended penny dreadfuls, right?
He did. He wrote a defense of penny dreadfuls, defending cheap pulp fiction. He defended slang. He defended farce. He defended detective stories.
He loved detective stories.
He loved them. Chesterton argued that true, robust optimism doesn't just praise the obviously beautiful things, like a sunset or a Beethoven symphony. True optimism finds objective value, structure, and meaning in what society mistakenly calls ugly or trivial.
So he believed there was this fierce, hidden dignity in the everyday things that the snobs look down upon.
Exactly. And Beato is doing exactly what Chesterton did in The Defendant. Beato is putting grunge on the stand and defending it against the musical snobs. He proves that a messy, screaming, distorted angst anthem is actually built on profound musical intelligence. He finds the beauty in the noise, and he forces you to respect the craft.
He defends the dignity of the craft wherever it's found. But, this reverence for human craftsmanship inevitably leads to a major tension in Beato's worldview.
It does.
Because when you spend your life studying this deeply human, wonderfully imperfect craftsmanship of the past, you start to see the stark contrast with the modern technological shortcuts of today. This organic perfection we're talking about, it didn't just start in the 90s.
No, the true crucible for this kind of intense human discipline was the analog era. That's where bands were quite literally destroying their medium to get the perfect sound.
Let's dive into that analog era, because this is where the conversation naturally shifts from celebrating past brilliance to kind of critiquing the current state of music. Let's look at another one of Beato's deep dives. Queen's epic masterpiece, Bohemian Rhapsody.
Oh, this is a perfect example.
Beato sat down for a long, incredibly detailed interview with Queen's legendary guitarist, Brian May, and listening to them discuss how they recorded that song back in 1975, it sounded less like a creative recording session and more like a grueling, high-stakes manual labor job.
It was an entirely different physical reality back then. They were recording on analog tape. And we have to remember, magnetic tape is literally just plastic coated in magnetic particles running over a metal head. It has severe physical limitations.
Right, it's not a hard drive.
Exactly.
Okay.
So Brian May explained this process to Beato called bouncing tracks. In a modern digital studio today, if you want 100 different vocal harmonies, you just click a button and open 100 pristine digital tracks on your screen.
Infinite space.
Infinite. But Queen only had access to 16-track or 24-track tape machines. To achieve that massive, sweeping choir sound in the operatic section of Bohemian Rhapsody, they had to record 3 separate voices onto the tape and then bounce or compress those 3 tracks down to a single track just to free up physical space on the tape.
And then they would record 3 more voices.
Right, and bounce those down over and over and over.
And the terrifying part of this, if you've ever worked with old audio equipment, is that every single time you bounce tracks on analog tape, the tape degrades. You literally lose audio quality. You are physically wearing the magnetic particles off the plastic strip.
It is incredibly stressful.
So Queen had to commit to their choices immediately. They couldn't say, oh, let's fix the volume of that one tenor harmony later in post-production. They were pre-mixing as they went, risking the entire sonic integrity of this masterpiece with every single pass of the tape.
The pressure was immense, but out of that severe limitation came breathtaking human ingenuity. During that same interview, May talked about the legendary DC amp.
Oh, this story is amazing.
It is. This is a small amplifier built by Queen's bassist, John Deacon, who just happened to be an electronics whiz. He found a discarded radio circuit board sitting in a literal dumpster.
A dumpster?
Yes. He pulled it out, wired it up with some germanium transistors to a bookshelf speaker, and created this incredibly saturated, warm, orchestral guitar tone. It's a tone that Brian May still uses to this day.
Decades later.
Yeah. And May told Beato that they've had top-tier engineers and software developers working for years to digitally model and reproduce the exact sound of that dumpster amplifier in a computer plugin. And they still can't quite capture it.
That is the most fiercely Chestertonian thing I have ever heard. Finding literal trash in a dumpster and using human ingenuity to turn it into an irreplaceable conduit for objective beauty.
It really is.
But the part of that Brian May interview that really stopped me in my tracks was when they got into Freddie Mercury's vocals.
Oh, the vocal tuning.
Yeah, because today, almost every pop vocal on the radio is run through auto-tune or Melodyne. Every pitch is flattened out by a computer to hit the exact mathematical center of the note. But Brian May told Beato something so counterintuitive. He said that if you tune vocals perfectly, they actually end up sounding small.
It's a fascinating acoustic paradox. May explained that what makes Freddie Mercury's vocals sound so fat and huge is the physical reality of a human being pushing their vocal cords to the absolute limit. When a human sings with that much passion and volume, they naturally drift. They might be a few microcents sharp or a few microcents flat. It's never mathematically perfect.
Yeah.
And when you layer multiple vocal takes that are all slightly drifting in different directions, they physically rub against each other acoustically.
It creates a natural chorus effect.
Exactly. It creates width in the stereo field. That acoustic friction, the literal sound of the human struggle to hit the note, is what makes the sound massive. When you auto-tune a choir, all the voices snap to the exact same frequency.
Right, they perfectly align.
And that perfect alignment actually cancels out the width. The sound physically shrinks.
Okay, wait, let me stop you there, though. We live in the 21st century. Isn't technology supposed to free the artist? I mean, we have infinite digital tracks. We never have to worry about tape degrading. We have auto-tune to fix every sour note. We have Spotify algorithms to curate our exact tastes. And now we even have AI that can generate a fully mixed track from a text prompt. If we've removed all the friction, shouldn't music be better than it has ever been in human history?
Well, that's the utopian promise of the tech industry, right? But Rick Beato fiercely argues the exact opposite. And this is where he steps fully into the role of a cultural critic. Beato frequently posts videos lamenting the total homogenization of modern music.
He gets pretty fired up about it.
Very fired up. He argues that these very tools, the algorithm-driven playlists, infinite digital effects, auto-tune, this obsession with the mathematically perfect single, they have stripped music of its diversity, its regional flavor, and its authenticity.
Right, everything sounds the same.
And he takes this threat so seriously that in November 2023, Beato actually went to Washington and testified before a U.S. Senate AI Insight Forum.
Wow.
Yeah, he warned lawmakers about artificial intelligence scraping the copyrighted, emotional work of human artists to generate algorithmic background music. He sees it as an existential threat to human creativity.
So he's not just a grumpy guy yelling at clouds about kids these days. He's identifying a structural, philosophical shift in how our culture values art and human effort.
Exactly. And this maps flawlessly onto Chesterton's sociological masterpiece, What's Wrong with the World?
Published in 1910.
Right. So Chesterton was looking at the rapid industrialization of his era. He was watching the rise of Taylorism and scientific management, where factory workers were being treated as mere cogs in a machine just to maximize efficiency.
The optimization of the human being.
Yes. Chesterton argued that society begins to collapse when it prioritizes mechanical or biological metaphors over human ideals. He warned that we were starting to treat society like a machine that just needs to run efficiently without friction.
And he thought that was backwards.
Completely backwards. He said you don't build a society based on what is easiest for the machine. You build a society based on the messy, striving human ideal.
So if we take Chesterton's warning from 1910 and apply it to Beato's critique of modern music today,
the parallel is chilling. We are currently prioritizing the mechanical perfection of a computer program, auto-tune, rhythmic quantization, algorithmic AI generation, over the human ideal of a striving, struggling, imperfect artist.
technology should be a servant to human creativity, a tool in the hands of the artist.
But instead, it's becoming a replacement for the artist. In our pursuit of a frictionless, perfectly in-tune product, we are erasing the very friction that makes a Freddie Mercury vocal sound huge. We are optimizing the soul right out of the music.
We are trading the majesty of the human struggle for the cheapness of mechanical perfection. We'd rather have the flawlessly auto-tuned AI track than the guy sweating in a hot studio, bouncing analog tracks and praying this physical tape doesn't snap.
There's a profound loss.
So what does this all mean for us? For the person driving their car right now or sitting on their porch listening to this, let's pull Beato's worldview together, because the real mystery here isn't just why Rick Beato makes these videos. The mystery is why 5.7 million people are eagerly watching them.
That is the million-dollar question.
Right. Why is there such a massive, insatiable hunger for a 60-year-old guy talking about the Mixolydian mode and analog tape degradation?
The hunger exists because Beato is tapping into an innate, universal human longing. People are longing for tradition, for craftsmanship, and for objective standards of beauty.
Objective beauty, yeah.
In that Brian May interview, they touched on the endurance of truly great melodies. Beato noted that his demographic data shows his audience ranges from kids as young as 8 to adults in their 80s.
That's a huge spread.
And they all love Queen? And Brian May humbly suggested that their music crossed generational boundaries because it spoke to the hopes and dreams of every man. It wasn't just disposable rock star posturing designed to look cool for a few months in the 70s. It was tapping into universal, enduring human truths.
You know, I look at what Beato is doing, and the best analogy I can come up with is an art restoration expert.
Okay, tell me more.
You know those videos where a restorer takes a classic 400-year-old oil painting that is just completely covered in yellowed varnish and centuries of fireplace soot?
Oh, yeah. Those are so satisfying to watch.
Right. And they take a Q-tip with a special solvent, and they carefully wipe away the grime, and it reveals this shocking, vivid, Original lapis lazuli blue underneath.
Yes.
That's what Rick Beato does for our ears. He gets under the hood of a song we've heard a million times, wipes away the grime of our own overfamiliarity, and reveals an objective beauty that exists whether the current Spotify algorithm recognizes it or not. He proves that the beauty was there all along.
It is entirely a process of rediscovery. And that connects perfectly to Chesterton's most famous book, Orthodoxy.
Which is all about rediscovery.
Exactly. In the opening chapter of Orthodoxy, Chesterton tells this wonderful story about an English yachtsman who set sail to discover a wild, exotic new island.
He wants to find something totally new.
Right. He sails through a fog, slightly miscalculates his course, and lands on a beach. He plants his flag in what he thinks is an undiscovered world, but only later does he realize he's actually just landed back on the coast of England.
So he thought he was discovering a radical new world, but he had actually just arrived back home.
Chesterton uses this brilliant story to describe his own philosophical journey. He spent his youth searching for a radical, progressive, totally new truth, only to realize that the ancient Orthodox traditions held the profound truths he was looking for all along. Finding the tradition wasn't a surrender. It was the ultimate romantic adventure.
He discovered that the tradition wasn't a cage to trap him in. It was the actual foundation of his sanity.
And Chesterton coined a famous phrase for this: the democracy of the dead.
The democracy of the dead.
He argued that we shouldn't disenfranchise our ancestors just because they happen to be dead. We should listen to the accumulated wisdom of the past.
Which is exactly what Beato is facilitating.
Yes. What Beato's millions of subscribers are proving is that people are exhausted by endless novelty. We are tired of the algorithmic feed throwing empty sonic calories at us every week. Beato's audience is actively hungering for tradition.
They want to understand the lineage of great songwriting.
They want to respect the blood, sweat, and tears of a perfectly placed flat sixth chord. They want to believe that objective standards of excellence actually exist, and that it is a noble, worthy thing to strive for them.
Which really brings us back to where we started today. I mean, we've gone from the microscopic wonder of analyzing Dave Grohl's slightly delayed kick drum to Brian May's dumpster amplifier, all the way to a grand defense of human imperfection against the cold, sterile perfection of artificial intelligence.
What a journey.
It is. Rick Beato isn't just teaching us music theory, is he? He's teaching us how to listen again. He's teaching us how to appreciate the immense dignity of hard work and how to cultivate a deep, profound gratitude for the artists who bleed over a mixing console to give us the soundtrack to our lives.
And in doing so, I really believe he is fulfilling Chesterton's greatest mandate. Chesterton wrote that the whole object of his life was to remain astonished at the world. Beato is teaching us how to remain astonished. He proves that analyzing a masterpiece doesn't kill the magic. It reveals that the magic is underwritten by a glorious, deeply human discipline.
But before we sign off, I want to leave you, the listener, with a final provocative thought to mull over. We spent a lot of time today talking about how Freddie Mercury's slightly out-of-tune drifting vocals are exactly what make Queen sound so passionate, human, and massive.
Right.
And we talked about how perfectly quantized auto-tuned music ultimately sounds small, thin, and robotic. So here's the question. What does that mean for how we are living our daily lives?
Oh, that's interesting.
Because we live in an era obsessed with optimization. We use apps to perfectly track and quantize our sleep schedules, our macros, our productivity, and our workouts. We're terrified of inefficiency, of messy emotions, of wasted time. We want everything snapped to a perfect digital grid.
We want to be quantized humans.
Exactly. But if perfection makes music sound small and robotic, are we accidentally auto-tuning the humanity right out of our own existence? Are we trying so hard to be perfect, frictionless machines that we're losing the fat, huge, passionate beauty of a slightly messy human life?
Now that is a truly Chestertonian question to take with us into the week.
It's something to think about the next time you hear a great song on the radio. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive. As always, keep your ears open and your sense of wonder intact. Signing off from the little station on Commercial Street in Atchison, Kansas. We'll see you next time on Chesterton Radio.